Welcome to APSCo's Business Transformation Zone. I'm Steve Carter. I'm a co-founder of the Satori Partnership and an industry veteran of almost 40 years. And those that know me, I'm very passionate about the industry and I'm particularly passionate about the future of the industry. So in this series of videos we're working with APSCo on, we're looking to challenge some of the norms and actually provoke some thought around the way we need to reshape the industry going forward. Now, this particular video is really looking poignantly at actually, is the old playbook broken? And actually, what's the modern way to grow your recruitment business in what is fundamentally a new market, a new way of doing things? Not just driven by us, but driven by macroeconomics, driven by candidates and the behavioral changes in generations, driven by AI and the evolution of new technology, and actually thinking about what's formed the industry to be the way it is today. So hopefully you find some of these themes interesting and challenging, and actually it starts to formulate a plan for you to move your business forward over the next 6 to 12 months or even beyond. So one of the things that's really important to understand is that the market rebound that we've always been used to, and particularly for those that have been in the industry for a long time, know that we always knew that if you could ride out the down cycle, the up cycle would be more than rewarding. There'd be some sort of rebound. But I think this is a new reality. And in fact, the market's been bobbling on the bottom of the market for quite a bit of time now. And there's not really any material change. Now, I know as we head into 2026, a number of people are talking about green shoots and things are better. But I think it's difficult to believe, given AI, given lots of other changes in terms of global markets and the way labor and the workforce uh, works, that ultimately this is going to rebound anywhere like we've been used to before. And we got used to a post-COVID boom, but that quickly subsided into what has been the last 2 or 3 years of operation. So this is going to require a market reset. It's not a challenge about how you weather the storm. It's about how you re-navigate yourself going forward in the market. So let's examine how this came to be and in fact what's driving things going forward. So a lot of recruitment businesses currently have people in highly influential leadership positions that forged their careers in the post-COVID period. Now, in 2022, it was more difficult to find an agency that failed than it had succeeded. All of us enjoyed the fruits of that post-COVID rebound, and it was what an exciting time it was. Candidates were on the move, jobs were plentiful, there was a pent-up demand for talent, and all of us did really, really well. However, since then, things have normalized, and there's been external influences like uh, the advent of artificial intelligence and the impact. So in 2022, the legacy was cashing in on the market rebound, and leaders were developed in that period that they'd learned to harvest demand, but they hadn't learned to cultivate it. They hadn't learned how to build an organization. They were good at surfing the wave of optimism and performance. And what that's created is an experience gap. That's resulted in a lack of resilience, a lack of depth in how to motivate people and how to pivot business models. Everybody, by and large, is still trying to do things in a very similar way than they've done them before. And in fact, we'll talk about AI adoption, but a lot of the AI adoption is very superficial. It isn't fundamentally changing the way we work. It's simply putting AI on top of some not too good processes and practices. And that's making it even more difficult for the leaders of businesses who are hoping there's a turnaround just by buying the technology. So we have a leadership gap, we have a vacuum in the industry of people that understand how to build and navigate businesses through more choppy times. Now, there's a natural instinct to rinse and repeat. And I understand why this is because a lot of the industry that we work in and love is made up of relatively small businesses. And history says that the market will rebound. If you stick at the same process long enough, success will come. And that's always been the case. But again, I go and speak to many agency owners, founders, and directors, and I'm still seeing that behavior where Some of them are caught in a hand-to-mouth, month-to-month financial position where, hitting target has to happen. Otherwise, there's cash pressure on the business, there's profitability pressure on the business. And again, traditionally, agencies have adjusted their costs by hiring or reducing headcount as being the biggest variable cost. But again, rinse and repeat isn't going to work going forward because the market's evolved and the AI and technology materially disrupted the way people operate. Not to mention the fact that our clients are much more enabled and weaponized with the same or better technology than we've got. So as a fundamental shift happened, and we need to look at transformation as a real part of how we move forward. And strategy is critical. This isn't a case of just throw enough resource at it and you'll get by. This is about moving in a different way, a more efficient way. And in some of the other sessions we've done in Transformation Zone for APSCo, we've talked about some of the normalization of new ways of working and adjusting costs and working on a leaner basis. So this is about having the confidence to establish new norms in the market, to rethink core processes, looking at the barriers, and not just relying on the old playbook as a safe bet, because it's not guaranteed. And it's a way to become irrelevant rather than a way to prosper and develop in the future. So there are a number of things fundamentally shaping the market. The two of the primary forces are a demand cliff. So many consultants were very successful in markets that had a never ending waterfall of opportunity, where rather than drive demand and actually go and procure vacancies or build relationships with clients, they were simply harvesting the volume that existed within those markets. Every phone call resulted in a new vacancy, it resulted in a new placement, another fee, and it was really satisfying the volumes in those markets. And as we know, markets like healthcare, with increased government involvement, have seen that demand really subside. So whilst it's still a very exciting market to be in, it just doesn't operate the same way anymore. And that market and others have experienced a demand cliff. And the other thing that's really impacting the market's AI erosion. So those agencies that were focused on low barrier to entry roles, perhaps in junior clerical roles or high process roles in offices, for example, are being replaced by the ability of AI to not only replace the person, but to actually do the job. And therefore, a lot of those jobs don't exist anymore, and many more are under threat going forward. And there are new jobs being created, but those agencies that have built their history on jobs that can be replaced by AI are seeing demand drop even further. So there are critical forces at play that mean we have to reconsider how we work as an agency. And much of the influence of AI is not just at the junior level. Much of that involvement is at much more sophisticated levels of analytics and analysis, of coding, developing technology. And that's really going to impact the traditional heartland of many recruiters. So you've got to look at the metrics that drove boom time success and, in fact, how they can be misleading in the modern market. Um, Traditionally, we've been focused on measuring lagging indicators, how many placements we made, how profitable we were, what was our revenue growth like, and we were making decisions based on that information. And in fact, many have said it's sort of optimizing yesterday's game because we're looking backwards from where we were and making decisions based on that. Volume metrics made sense back in the day because the market was full of opportunity. You made enough calls, you sent enough CVs, placements would follow. But that's not true anymore because it's all about relationships. It's about much deeper consulting and value added services. And so we have to shift from lagging indicators to leading indicators, things that will move the business forward in the future. And in fact, that add a lot more value to the client and the candidate experience. And that's going to be very data centric. Now, again, from experience at the Satori Partnership, we know that data is something often talked about, but very rarely invested in or acted upon. And if you take nothing else away from this video, I would strongly suggest that you need to get involved in making your data more current, making more relevant, making it more usable, segmenting the data so you can deploy more intuitive and excellent marketing solutions to drive demand, and start to move towards indicators that are leading you forward, not reflecting on the past. The old KPI rulebook really needs to be burned and to move forward. So when I talk about leading indicators, let's compare some. So many agencies measure time on the phone, and generationally irrelevant because people just don't use the phone as often as they did. I know agencies that spend a lot of money on telephony solutions measuring minutes and hours spent by consultants, but a lot of their correspondence is being done by digital platforms like WhatsApp, or in fact, emails even outdated to many on many levels. So time, the number of calls made, number of CVs sent. Consultants have long been the master of spray and pray. Get the number up to keep the boss off my back, and really hitting stats and targets for the sake of keeping the boss off your case and ticking a box. And that measurement of volume really has become obsolete. Whereas when you think about a modern playbook, and these are not the only things that you can measure, but how embedded in your accounts are you? What is that penetration in a client like? What percentage of their business do you get? How many times do you transact with them? How many vertical disciplines within that client do you transact with? Because it's true that it is easier to get business from clients you already deal with from those that you've never spoken to before. Yet so many recruiters are still out there on the phone pitching candidates to clients that don't know them, that don't have any trust basis for that relationship. So you need to move to much more intuitive client based or client penetration based analysis of moving forward. How are you utilizing the data? Are we upcycling and refreshing our database so it's as good as it possibly can be? So we're dealing with currency. Now, all the AI tools out there, or many of the AI tools out there, will allow you to keep your database crisp and fresh. And in fact, they will ingest external data, they'll process it, screen it, segment it, and plug it into automation and allow your consultants to be working on very high value tasks. I think one of the interesting things for me is the comeback of old school face-to-face meetings. And again, high touch service where you're actually meeting your clients face to face, not over Zoom, not over Teams, not via email, but actually making the effort. There's a very high return on investment for an old school skill like that. Clients value the interaction. Candidates enjoy the interaction. At the end of the day, we're all human, and that's really, really important that we do that. And I would strongly suggest that you reconsider how you do face to face meetings, because those that are done by digital platforms or even not at all are not only lazy, they're suboptimal. And then think about value adding conversations. And again, agencies have been very good at producing content in the past. And, a colleague of mine affectionately calls it broadcasting, where, we'll send a salary guide, we'll send market data and market information. But it's really, really important that in the modern playbook, you get into the value adding conversation with the client and start to build that sort of intellectual professional connection where they understand you deeply understand your market, not just spray and pray with CVs. So it's time to throw the old playbook out and build a new one about leading indicators. So one of the things that I find often when I talk to companies and I meet agencies is that team spirit is not the same as team culture, and they get confused. Most agencies I know have great team spirit because agencies have hired a lot of people that are very similar. And so those similar extroverted type people tend to get on very well. There's a lot of noise in an office, Friday drinks, group celebrations, um, high achiever trips. Um, they're not drivers of performance. They're nice to haves, um, but they're symptoms of a good culture. They're not the cause of the good culture. And so the team spirit aspect is the fluffy, frothy stuff on top of the cappuccino of recruitment rather than what is driving the culture. The hardwired team culture comes from performance. It comes from how robust it is, how openly information is shared, how problems are solved, how the team energizes itself every day by achieving, and how it rolls over downturns and actually problem solves to move forward. So culture is hardwired. It is not the fluffy piece on top, which is team spirit. So I would encourage you to really understand how your team culture is rather than your team spirit, because one is sustainable and it's made of concrete, and the other can come and go. What motivated me back in recruitment and what motivates many of you that are leaders and owners and founders of recruitment agencies no longer motivates your team. And it's a misalignment. I'm from the vintage where the longer I worked and the more I talked about my reward and fees I'd made, um, I was always on, I was always available. Um, there was never a time I wasn't really working. That was how it was. And many people of my generation reflect on those times fondly and often misconstrue the fact that consultants and recruiters today don't seem to put those same values into place as being lazy. But ultimately, we're profoundly misaligned with the priorities of a modern, diverse workforce, and the businesses and those that lead them need to change. So, there's a lot of different external factors and life circumstances and how households work that drive that behavior, but actually it operates in a completely different context to what the agency market was built on. So, it's time to change. Work life boundaries are important. And with the new Employment Rights Bill, there are many considerations around how we interact with our own staff, but actually people like to be treated like intelligent adults and professionals. They work in a different way, and flexibility is not a perk, it's an expectation. People want to make sure that their daily work life has an injection of balance to it, that it's related to who they are as a person. And the outcome is about culture, and it's about what you bring in engaging people. And it's about minimizing their attrition because they don't leave to go to competitors that drive them harder. They leave to go to competitors who understand their values. And that's an addressable issue that you can change within your own agency and within your own business. So rather than thinking about, rewarding those people that work longer, think about those that are more effective, and how do you create a business culture where it's about collaboration, it's about effectiveness, it's about really solving the problems, not only internally but externally. And that's a real challenge for owners that have grown up in previous generations in recruitment that require doing it a different way by simply counting the numbers and judging people based on that sort of performance. The old playbook is failing and it's continuing to fail. And it's continuing to fail because it's built on an aggregation of individuals pushing very hard. And it's not really built on data and connection and cultural design. And we have to become more sophisticated as an industry because our market expects us to be. People want to interact with us in a much more informed way. Finding a candidate is no longer a skill. Finding a candidate is easy. Anyone can do it, so can our clients. And for candidates, they have the opportunity to directly interact with employers easier than they've ever done. So we have to make wholesale transformation, not just incremental tweaks to the business. So we need to reimagine the metrics by which we measure the business on value drivers and not just things that are easy to count. We need to engineer the culture built on performance, not on what we hope happens, not on the prospects of the forecast, but actually really what's happening in a business that drives that culture. And we need to really get good at data, using data in every sense, not just as a repository where people can go and extract a phone number or an email address, but actually the platform by which we build the business and actually how it leads our marketing, how it leads information, informed decision making, and how it leads to further success by being able to predict the activity that comes in the future rather than just picking up uh, the A to Z and starting to bring people from top to bottom. So when you think about this and break it down, reimagine your metrics on a human connection. Prioritize face-to-face meetings. Measure leading indicators, not lagging indicators. Making sure that all the right things are being done, and use data for insight and not judgment. Don't use data to beat people with. Don't use it to look back and say, here's what you didn't do. Use the data to understand where your team is most effective, where individual employees are at their best. How do you combine skills in order to make a great combination based on data and evidence? And then how do you deploy that to start to open up the markets for you going forward? And again, if there's one thing that you take away from these videos, is that if you do nothing else, then you must get your data right. Because if you don't get your data right, it renders your AI or any attempt to implement AI as almost useless. And your data is really going to make you more efficient from a financial point of view. Because if you think about the way recruiters work, there's a lot of effort goes in for not a lot of return. And in fact, the data will allow people to work closer to where they're most likely to get a result and where people are most likely to expect to interact with them. And therefore, the ratio of success becomes higher and your cost of delivery goes lower and you make more profit as a result. So make it a competitive advantage and shift the way you operate. Build a culture of transparency and trust. There's a saying, I think by Peter Drucker, that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And a great culture can make an ordinary plan work, but the reverse is never true. And in fact, that is also true of leaders, that great leaders can make an ordinary process look good, but that is also not true in reverse. Culture is not something you need to leave to chance. You have to design it, build it, and work on it. It just doesn't happen by itself. And it's a design factor, but it's something that is built around transparency, where data is shared, challenges are openly dealt with, problems are solved collectively, people are treated like intelligent adults, and it authentically builds buy-in. And this is a departure for many agencies that still work on a command and control structure built around pure volume. And it's all about the art of the deal. Well, this is about how to build a transparent culture. It's about avoiding the conversations at the water cooler or the kitchen counter where they can undermine that culture and that value more than anything else. And therefore, casual commentary can become fact when in fact it's actually fiction. And really, as a leader, try and get involved in what drives your business because you have to be able to accommodate different priorities at different times in order to attract the best people and to optimize the investments. I mean, one size fits all died when COVID happened. This is about being better and more adaptable, and culture is at the heart of what you need to be doing. And again, dexterity and real value from data. I've talked about this consistently through this video, and anyone that meets me outside knows that I talk about this a lot. But you must understand the variables that make your business work. It's a much more robust approach to data in terms of measurement of performance. It's not just generating reports, it's not just slicing and dicing data. It's actually understanding the cause and effect of performance. And it's actually allowing you to predict future performance and opportunity by using insights that lead you to having your people spend more time doing productive things. And you must master data-driven dexterity because it is going to dominate the way recruitment transforms in the near term and the medium term and maybe forever. So start to consider how you shift from process to value creation. Many recruitment businesses are just process houses that are pushing things very hard on a day-to-day basis or as hard as possible, and not always with great return on investment. So how do you convert that process into value-adding products and services that clients and candidates see as worth the engagement? And then start asking your customers, your clients, and your candidates about the challenges they experience and how you can improve your journey. And whilst getting customer feedback's an old staple of recruitment, it's rarely acted upon. But this is where you can get an edge against everybody else in the market by not assuming you know, but actually asking. Because not only is recruitment going through transformation, most of your clients are as well. And being dynamic and able to synchronize with them in terms of what they see as changing will really help you align your business to theirs. And leadership's critical. When I go and meet with customers and we go out and do work with boards and we go and do work with leadership teams, it's really, really important we get a barometer on how that leadership team is mandated to do what's required to drive a business forward and not simply manage a numbers based process or, in fact, simply inspect the work of others downstream from them. This is about courage, dexterity. It's about a focus on value creation, in fact, an obsessive focus on value creation. And so, really, we propose there are four pillars. And that's leaders who challenge everything. They've got courage to rethink the process, the KPIs, the measurements. They question assumptions that have just been unexamined for years and years and years. As I said at the start, not much has changed in my 40 years. Little bits here and there, but really when you strip it down, it's very similar. And now is the time to change. Because the biggest risk is doing what you're doing now. Lead with humanity. So again, although many agencies are fantastic at doing this now, there are still those that really try to beast the business forward rather than base it on trust and transparency. And because they don't build it on trust and transparency, they attract the wrong people. And when they attract the wrong people, they go down a darker road in terms of where they move forward. So your people will always be your competitive advantage, whether they're AI enabled or not. The AI simply frees your people up to do better work, to really get into the consulting and understanding and problem solving on behalf of clients and candidates. So even in the most AI enabled environment, your people are your competitive advantage and you need to treat them that way. Um, be dexterous. I mean, understand your business variables and be agile. You have to become more agile. Recruitment's been a very rigid profession. We might adapt in a transactional sense to a client and make a square peg fit or adapt what we're doing. But this is about more fluidity about how your overall business operates. It's about how to read the market and adapt quickly and adjust your approach, but don't lose your identity. It's about how do you adapt to the way the market's evolving and things are happening very, very quickly. And be obsessed over value. Constantly ask for feedback from customers about how you can serve them better. Recruitment has not always enjoyed the best reputation for service or the best reputation for how it supports its customers. However, by making value the heart of everything you do, you'll never lack for business. Because if you think about your own consumer behavior, where you feel valued as a customer is where you spend your money time and time again. And that is no different in the world of recruitment. And finally, I learned this lesson many years ago about leadership, and that is a leader is someone who will take you where you wouldn't have ordinarily gone by yourself. And therefore, the mandate for the modern leader is really to inspire those to go with them somewhere they wouldn't have gone by themselves and go above and beyond what they would normally expect to do. And so, this is really about throwing away the old playbook and moving into the new era of recruitment. So I'm a very confident person about the future of the industry. I think it's got a place. I think work is fundamental to how we operate as humans and in society. It's how people support their families. It's how people meet other people and operate in communities. And it's fundamentally critical the work we do, but it is going through a transformation. And it's really time that you looked at your old playbook and adapted it to something a bit more contemporary and relevant for the times we're in, not just commercially, but culturally. So I hope you found this video interesting. I hope you found some of the points challenging. I hope it helps you think and actually start to think about how you build a strategy going forward to build a sustainable and successful recruitment company. Please check out the other content here in the APSCo Transformation Zone. I think you'll find it useful and thought provoking, and in fact, hopefully, a catalyst to some level of change. And that anyone at the Satori Partnership can help you in the future, please get in touch. We'd love to do that for you. And thank you very much for listening.